Recording and turn my mic off and my video off and turn it over to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Rao. I'm the director of the Buffalo State Civic and Community Engagement Office.
And I'm Joy Garino. I'm the faculty coordinator for service learning at Buffalo State. So I work very closely with Laura and everybody in the Civic and Community Engagement Office. I'm also a professor and coordinator of the dance program in the theater department.
So the presentation today is really aimed at a few things. We wanted to talk about community engaged learning in general. My slides are not advancing. There we go. Do an overview of community engaged learning for those of you that this might be new for. We want to talk about quality components of community engaged learning. So if you've tried service learning or other forms of community engagement and are looking for some deepening and broadening of your perspectives, we're going to get into a taxonomy that we developed at Buffalo State to really help frame quality practices. And then, of course, we're in a pandemic. So as I'm sure has been a topic of many of the workshops this week, we're going to talk about community engaged learning in a pandemic. No, it doesn't have to stop. I think many of our faculty and community partners weren't quite sure what to do in the spring. And, none of us really were, but we've really identified some good strategies, some good practices, and have moved forward a lot of community engaged learning for students. Even though they're not physically in the community, there's still opportunities to provide experiential learning that meets community identified needs. And so we're going to kind of talk about highlights and opportunities for that.
Great, so we're going to start. We have a couple of polls set up for everybody just to get a read of the room here who's with us today. So the first one is basically, what is your experience with community engaged learning? And if we could bring up that first poll, please. There we go. So asking everybody to select one. Hey, it looks like we have a little bit of everybody.
Come on, let's get to 20. Let's get there.
I know, right?
I can't answer the poll, unfortunately. Come on. Well, if there's the two of you and there's Jen and I, so that's pretty good. I'm going to end it.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Gives us a good idea.
All right, you can see the results there, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just tell me when you want me to take them down.
Yeah, we're good.
All right.
Yeah, terrific. Okay, so it looks like there are folks that have either most of the people have never participated in community engaged learning, or you've done some training and have implemented a little bit, but not really as kind of a full designated service learning or community engaged work. That's great. We'll explore some more of that. So we do have a second poll to just kind of throw up there because we're trying to gauge where everybody is this semester, right? It's been a crazy fall semester. So what does the fall semester look like for you? And in this next poll, if we could bring that one up, or we did, great. We're going to ask you to just select one from this group, or I'm sorry, check all that apply from this group. So you can read them through and select whichever ones apply to you.
All right, let's get to 20 on this one. Come on. 17. Yes, you. I'm talking to you. Okay, there you go. I'm talking to you now. Let's go.
You're funny, Chris.
All right, just tell me when you want me to end it.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Call it.
I think we're good. Yeah. Great. And in looking at this too, I'm wondering, we didn't make a space for those that have never done community engaged learning. So taking into consideration the other poll, it looks like those of you that do community engaged learning, there's sort of a half and half here of people who are still participating in utilizing community engaged learning this semester, and others of you from that group that do community engaged learning, you decided to take a little bit of a break. And maybe a little later on, we can talk about why you decided to take that break, and maybe some of the strategies that we have for you will help you to continue to do community engaged learning in the spring semester. And it looks like almost everybody is either remote or hybrid. I don't see anybody with fully in person, and that's true for Buffalo State as well. Most of our courses are being conducted remotely right now. Some of them were always online, but very few of us are teaching hybrid, and it depends on the content of the course and whether we need to be hybrid or not. So great.
You can take that down, Chris.
Yeah, so we can take both those polls down. Thanks for sharing, everybody. It helps us to get a sense of where we need to go.
So at Buffalo State, we have a very extensive community engagement effort and initiative. You may know we're in Buffalo, in the city of Buffalo. We're the only comprehensive institution in SUNY that's located in a city. So we're very proud of that, and we're very aware of our role and responsibility in the city of Buffalo as a result. So as I mentioned, I'm the director of the Civic and Community Engagement Office. Out of our area, we support faculty who are interested in doing various forms of community engagement that are listed on here. We also support co-curricular efforts on the part of student organizations and individual student groups, have co-curricular programs like Alternative Break, and then we support civic engagement efforts out of our area as well. So we had a huge effort to engage students and the community around Census 2020. And of course, we're in the heat of last minute voter engagement activities to support our urban engaged mission. We have, in terms of community engaged learning, we have an extensive number of faculty that offer service learning classes or community engaged learning classes every semester. So our definition of community engaged learning, we use a definition developed by Bringle and Hatcher quite a while ago, but we find that it fits still very well. And we've highlighted some important aspects of the definition here. Service learning is a credit bearing, right? So this is not co-curricular. This is embedded into a course for credit, which is important. It's an educational experience, reiterating the fact that it's tied to learning outcomes in the course that you teach. I tell faculty often, tell me about your course and I can tell you a community partner who can utilize the students in that course that clearly meets the learning outcomes that you're trying to achieve, provides an experiential learning opportunity for our students, and also meets some community priorities and make sure that everything is tied to an educational experience. So, service learning is a credit-bearing educational experience in which students participate in an organized, we highlighted there, service activity. What we mean by that is that we're not just sending students out, go and find something that fits what you're looking for, but that there's structure to it, that there's planning involved, there's conversations between the faculty member and the community organization so that the community partner understands the learning outcomes and the faculty member understands the project and how it fits. So we don't want to just send students out to find their own activity, that it's structured and planned and the students have some involvement in selecting what they're going to be doing. So the service activity meets identified community needs. We kind of talked about that already, right? It's not us determining how to fix a problem that we may find or address an issue that we think exists, but it's really relying on the expertise of the community organizations that are interested in collaborating with us and listening to their priorities and their understanding of the social problems or the issues from through their lens or from their perspective. Okay, so it meets identified community needs. And then in purple, we have another key aspect. The students reflect on the service activity in such a way as to gain further understanding of course content, right? So the reflection is around academic learning. The reflection is around a broader appreciation of the discipline. So, you know, what Joy often talks about there is what's the overall good? What's the point of the discipline and how does it fit in with society, right? So kind of that broader appreciation of the discipline's role in our community. And lastly, an enhanced sense of civic responsibility. So that definition, we think, really kind of summarizes some key things. We're going to break it down a whole lot further into what we call our taxonomy of quality community engaged learning activities and give you a sense of that. This is just a visualization of how service learning or how community engaged learning fits in with service and learning. So the top arrows here, the focus, right? If you think of service being on one end, how you're supporting the community, the outcome of the project, and learning being on the other, we want service learning to fit right in the middle of that area in terms of its focus. You want reciprocity in your partnerships so that the students are gaining, as we've been talking about, learning opportunities as well as civic development, and the organizations are benefiting equally. And then the primary intended beneficiary in this visual, again, just reiterates that reciprocity and that mutuality of the relationship. And then at the bottom, the building blocks here just again articulates, you know, especially if community engaged learning is new at your institution, or students and faculty don't quite understand the difference between various forms of applied learning or experiential learning. This visualization really helps. I kind of, you know, talk about volunteerism being on one side. The primary beneficiary of volunteerism are the individuals that you are supporting, you're helping. If you're tutoring, right, as a volunteer, the primary focus of that tutoring experience is to allow the child to improve their educational attainment. On the other end, if we think of internships, on the other end of this building block, the primary beneficiary of internships are the students, right? It's a capstone experience. It's an opportunity for the student to take everything they've learned over their undergraduate education and apply it in a real world situation. So of course, the organization where a student is doing an internship is benefiting by the student time, but that's not arguably the focus of an internship. So then the building blocks kind of include community service and field education is somewhere getting more towards the middle of that. And then service learning at the top, again, demonstrating with that little hyphen in between that there's mutuality in the beneficiary and the focus through that experience. Then just a little bit, as I mentioned, Buffalo State is very rooted in our community. And just to give you a picture of things that happen at Buffalo State. So last year, there were 74 faculty members from across the institution. About 2/3 of academic departments are represented annually in terms of teaching community engaged learning courses. So those 74 faculty offered 143 different courses, like I said, across the campus for about 1,500 students that were involved. And then in addition, through various other aspects of civic engagement, volunteerism, and community involvement, over 4,000 students were connected to other programs in the office. This year, just to give you a sense of what's happening now that we're in this unusual time in a pandemic, We still have 49 faculty members this semester who are teaching 81 different courses that have a community engaged learning component for over 1,200 students. And that's actually an increase over last fall. So there are more faculty and more courses being taught now in a pandemic in partnership with organizations in our community than we had last year at this time. And that's pretty remarkable. And we'll kind of get into why we think that that's been successful and why faculty are becoming even more involved.
Great. So in that big definition that Laura shared, we're going to break down how we reach each one of those components to make sure that there is quality community engaged learning. And one of the ways is through looking at some student learning outcomes or objectives. So a lot of courses lend themselves, or the student learning outcome that may have been written in the course proposal lends itself easily to a community engaged project or experience. Something in one of those student learning outcomes lends itself, in, you can see from my A to my B, a direct line to being able to address a community partner's needs. But sometimes it's a little bit more of a twisty way of looking at the student learning outcome to get to that point B, that assessment that needs to be done. And so this idea of multiple pathways it reminds us that we need to be really flexible with the way we're guiding students from what they need to learn in the course to what they will, how we will assess that learning outcome, right? So this is that multiple pathways. We can go to the next slide, Laura. Right, and this is called Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. And maybe some of you have heard about this. Very quickly, I'll just share a little bit about it, right? So UDL is a set of principles for curriculum development that give all individuals equal opportunities to learn. And I know I talk to my students all the time about the fact that way back in the day, we were called professors because we would stand up there and profess. And if you understood what we were talking about, good for you. And if you didn't, that's just too bad, right? And we know now that that's not the way to be teaching, because if our students don't learn, then really what's the point? So most of us make a real effort to try and reach all of the students in our classes. And we employ a lot of different ways to be able to do that. And that's what Universal Design for Learning is talking about. So you probably already do it, even if you didn't put that definition on it, right? So UDL provides a blueprint for creating instructional goals. So it's really just kind of a format that you, for best practices in a sense. So if you're already doing it, you might want to look into UDL to see what those best practices are, because they do provide a blueprint. They're methods, materials, assessments that work for everyone. There's not a single one-size-fits-all solution, which we know is not, that goes back to the old professor way of explaining information, PowerPoints, and or actually writing with chalk on the board, right, and lecturing. But it's flexible, flexible approaches that can be customized and adjusted for individual needs. So we give you the little link there if you want to investigate that a little bit further, just for your own purposes. What Laura mentioned before too was the quality components of community engaged learning. So this is a different way to address that student learning outcome. So let's say, for example, in your course, there isn't a student learning outcome that really gets to the heart of that community engaged project or experience, and you'd like to create something a little bit more direct, something that's really direct. Well, at Buffalo State, which we are the largest of the comprehensive colleges in the SUNY system, we decided that we wanted to, more and more faculty were doing community engaged learning, and so we wanted to give them the tools to be able to connect those student learning outcomes and the assessments with that quality project in between. And so we investigated a lot of uh, community engaged experiences and protocols for doing that. What we decided to do is adapt this one from IUPUI for a taxonomy for service learning. And what we found when we were investigating most of these, though, is they were coming from that teaching point of view again. They were very teacher centered. The teacher will do this, the faculty member will do that. But it wasn't really addressing whether the students were learning or not. So we kind of flipped all of these on their head. We decided to create our own taxonomy, and it is based on student learning outcomes. So the student learning outcomes will focus the project, and then the assessments, of course, will come back around to those student learning outcomes to see if that project actually got the students to think a little bit more deeply about those community experiences and making them quality components. So don't let this frighten you. This is the taxonomy for community engaged learning experiences in the biggest picture. It looks really complicated, but it's not, because each one of those shaded parts of our design here is just one community component. So we're going to break down each one of these community components and share with you how it really helped us to be successful in delivering quality engaged experiences at Buffalo State. So just to let you know, so in addressing some of those SLOs that I was talking about, here's some examples. These are draft examples. I'm just starting to work on this from the taxonomy. So you can see, well, I'll just hit the very first one. So evaluate the community engaged learning project and individual civic responsibilities. So one of the quality components is civic responsibility. And if in my course, I really wanted to make sure that they were addressing that civic responsibility component, maybe I would be using this particular outcome. I'll drop down to a lower one. One of the other areas in the taxonomy is respect for difference. So maybe one of the SLOs that I would create for this particular course would be analyze different points of view to challenge own and others' stereotypes. Maybe I want to do all of these in my course. And so I would, but these examples, these draft examples are created from the taxonomy. And like I said, we're going to go over each one of those so you'll see how you can develop them. So, so you can either find your own student learning outcome that goes directly to that assessment with that project in between as that method for getting there, or you can create from our taxonomy, you would be able to create some additional student learning outcomes or objectives that you really want to address with the students and then assess later. Okay. So in each one of the quality components of community engaged learning, like I said, they're broken out. And the very first one here is reciprocal partnerships. And just to explain how this works on the wheel, the taxonomy wheel, right? So you see reciprocal, so community experiences in the middle. And then you see up on the far diagonal corner is that idea of reciprocal partnerships. And then in that bigger picture that's a little overwhelming, right? This is the breakout from that. So there's the reciprocal partnerships. And we shaded these going from lighter to darker to show that the student learning outcome goes from something that is kind of an easy address of that reciprocal partnership idea, and the little arrow helps to indicate that as well, all the way to a really deeper understanding of reciprocal partnerships. So in the first one, that's sort of easier, the students will maybe just meet the community partner, get on the website and read a little bit about the community partners programming, what their organization does, the population that they assist. And then, like I said, if reciprocal partnerships and understanding reciprocal partnerships is really important to that particular service learning project and connected to your course, then maybe you'd want to do the deeper one, right? Where students reflect on that community partner and that big, as Laura mentioned before, that bigger picture of the greater good, right? How does the course content relate to what this community partner is doing in the great picture of the greater good, and then potentially drive them to be involved, continuing on into their life. Right. And these are just some of the partners that we work with. So, and these are just some. On our website, we have a whole list, and we get some that come and go, and we get new ones all the time. And basically, we encourage all faculty at Buffalo State, if they're doing any kind of community engaged learning, to let us know that they're working with those partners, not so that we can get all involved in everything that they're doing, but so that we can be a resource to them should something come up. And, you know, if communication with our community partners is really critical, and a little later on, I'm going to talk about some things that I've discovered through this whole thing with COVID, with how I can communicate even more often and in deeper ways with my community partners. And then this just kind of shows you a little bit of the benefits for our community partners. So as Laura mentioned, when we were talking about that balance, right? Again, that reciprocal partnership that we just addressed in the taxonomy, right? This is that reciprocal, an example of that reciprocal partnership, right? Here are these community partners, and this is what they said about the value of having a community engaged experience, having a student come into work with them and their, as I call it, population, right? So 100% of our community partners said that they increased the number of clients served. 98% better meet community needs. 96% increased mentoring services. 100% incorporate new ideas. And I just want to draw some attention to that particular one, because then my students feel like they are providing professional development to that community partner, which is really great. The students come up with all kinds of amazing projects and ideas that the community partner may have never thought of. And many of them continue to use those projects year after year to keep engaging their clients, their population. 98% increased services offered, and 98% make new connections. So you can see it's really valuable to our community partners to have us with them. And they have said, particularly during this pandemic.
Okay, the next section of the quality components that we're stressing is that respect for difference. Right now, there's so much emphasis and focus, of course, on equity and justice, that this is a particularly important aspect of the taxonomy. It always is, but there's there's just a highlight on opportunities to improve equity, improve access, improve justice, and increase awareness of individuals. So the respect for difference allows students to integrate into community organizations or work in communities in which they're not normally part of, right? And that opportunity can provide extensive learning experiences for the student to help to break down stereotypes, to help to develop appreciation for different backgrounds that people are coming from, and to grow and expand their understanding of how to live in society that has a difference, whether that's racial difference, whether that's age, whether that's economic difference. We've intentionally left this broad in the taxonomy in order to allow for some variation in how it fits with the particular course that you teach or faculty teaches, so that it seems to fit. So, you know, it could be as simple in the lightest green part of the triangle there, that they're simply understanding the mission of the organization. They're connecting to the nature and the needs of the individuals, and what, for example, might influence someone's life experience to, you know, to having them in the situation that they're involved in. And then at the other end, they're really diving deep into what are some root causes of some of the issues of injustice and inequity they're seeing through the experience. What are their own viewpoints, and how might they analyze and investigate their own viewpoints? And then how might they challenge the perceptions and the stereotypes that they felt going into the experience, they may continue to feel, and then in terms of standing up for issues of equity, right? How do they challenge other stereotypes? So again, depending on the course, you may not be able to get to that high level aspect of developing respect for difference, but that opportunity certainly might be there for some courses, and we think it's important to have a variation available. So we do a lot of assessment of students who participate in service learning experiences. Just at the top here, 93% of Buffalo State students feel that they learn from people who have different backgrounds than their own. You know, really, really critical statement. And we know that community engaged learning provides direct experiences for students to, as we mentioned, to integrate into other cultures or other economic backgrounds, other areas that can be intentional learning for students. And so we want to draw intentionality around that, right? We want to help students develop that respect, help them celebrate the diversity that they see around them, and be open to those learning opportunities that they're having on a day-to-day basis through their community engaged learning experience.
Great. So the next one that we want to address is that idea of critical reflection. And again, critical reflection, we're kind of following back and forth here along the image you see to the left, and then that breakdown on the right. So on our website, we offer lots of different ways for reflection to occur. And right, so reflection can happen through journals and written assignments. Reflection can happen in sharing in class discussion. During COVID, right, I have been doing some things with not only discussion boards in using Blackboard, which is used at Buffalo State, but I've done some things with Flipgrid where students can videotape themselves talking about their experiences. In critical reflection, we want to emphasize that reflection is not reporting, right? So students often want to share what they did, and what we want them to get to is not only what you did, but what was that impact on you? What was that impact on the community partner, right? So again, these are not sort in silos or in isolation. All of these quality components mix and mingle with each other, but that idea that you understand that and we can assess you through these critical reflections, understanding the importance of this work and the importance not only to you as a learner, but to the community partner, and what you learned from the community partner, which is so valuable as well. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about how the community partners have an opportunity to be sharing as teachers too. Oh, thanks for that, Laura. There it is. So why do we reflect? to learn academic content, to learn about self and others, to consider our role as citizens, to assess student learning, right? So again, like I said, there's that balance. It goes back and forth in that reciprocity, right? To assess student learning and to learn academic content, but then also to learn about ourselves and others and our role as active citizens. And that's what makes the difference between a one project that you might be doing in your course and doing a community engaged project, right? The greater good, the bigger picture. Okay. This is a little diagram that shows, Laura and I love this. This is, what did you do? Right. So there's the what. And then, so what? You know, so we start off with these pre-service reflections. Again, going back to the understanding difference, like I said, these all kind of mix and mingle together like puzzle pieces, understanding that difference in pre-service reflection. We are an urban institution. Where we are sending our students is often in some challenging places in the city of Buffalo. If they have come from a situation where they have never been into the city, as a matter of fact, one of our questions in our orientation is, can you tell us where the west, or have you ever been to the west side of Buffalo? And interestingly enough, there are students who do not raise their hand. And Buffalo State is located in the west side of Buffalo. So they don't even know they're in the city of Buffalo when they're coming to the college, right? So we do these pre-service reflections so that we can see as faculty where they are, they can see where they are before they even go into the community to do their work, right? And then they're reflecting during that service, because there's always room for change. I tell my students all the time, when you're going in, you need to read the room. We work with a lot of children. So you need to read the room, what is going on? And you might need to adjust right in that moment. Tell me about that. How did you adjust? What was going on, right? Getting them to think on their feet. And then of course, the post-reflection service, where which is what I was talking about, right? The journaling, the class discussion afterward. So we divide these up into what's going on, so what, why did you do it, what's the point, right? And then now what? Where are you going to go from here? You're going to continue doing these kinds of projects. We're in a time right now where we have the pandemic, a lot going on with social justice. We're involved in the census, as Laura said, and voting. There's so much to talk about in that bigger picture of advocacy in community. Right, so, and here we go. So there's journals, reflection papers, in-class discussions, trigger questions, and Laura shared our website for the CCE at Buffalo State. Like I said, we have lots, and then also campus compact.
Great. So the fourth component of quality community engaged learning is around assessment, right? And it's critical that faculty develop assessment that gets to the learning, right? We're not framing the assessment of a community engaged learning project around, did the student go out? Did they do the maximum number of hours that was required? You know, okay, give them their 50 points for doing their hours, right? That's not what we want to think about when we think about assessment. As Joy mentioned, reflection can be an assessment tool. So in how you frame your reflection activities, that can be a form of assessment. You're getting at what are the learning outcomes again of the course, and how is the experience directly contributing to the learning outcomes, to the academic content, and then you're assessing their learning. So, you know, it might be an opportunity to simply demonstrate that the student has, you know, experienced something, and they've written a reflection paper that articulates the theory behind the, you know, the practice, whether I'm thinking of sociology, you know, basic sociology theory, and how what they're experiencing in the community brings that theory to life for them. And they're able to articulate that learning through direct experience. So it's really critical, again, you know, that we're assessing opportunities for learning, and that we're assessing the quality. And you can, and we often do encourage faculty to be in the community with our students. We don't want to just send students out and not demonstrate to them that this is valuable enough for you to take the time also. So there's an opportunity to observe a student in the community, and Joy mentioned it might be if they're doing some instruction, you can assess the opportunity for how they've implemented their lesson plan or something like that as a form of assessment. They may, for example, be developing a PR plan or PR project. And so your assessment is about the actual project that's being developed and submitted to you on behalf of the organization, and how well they've met the objectives that the organization laid out, and the problem that they laid out for that PR plan. Or it might be a presentation. If if the students are doing an assessment project, for example, they've gone and done some surveying of clients to determine the impact of programming. And then at the end of the semester, they're offering a presentation of the results of their assessment to the community partner. The presentation itself might be the form in which you're assessing student learning.
Great. The next component, the last component that we're going to talk about, is civic responsibility. And this is the one where, to be perfectly honest, when I first started doing service learning, which was years and years and years ago, I could connect my student learning outcomes to that project and assess. I could assess their lesson plans, as we were just talking about with that assessment. I could assess their lesson plans to see if it was meeting the community partners' needs. I could assess it for content of the course. Are they following the format that I'm giving them? Do they understand what a student learning outcome or objective is? And these are for my teaching dance courses, my kinesthetic methods, teaching creative movement, right? So these are still dance courses. And I can do that in my technique classes as well, right? So, but the piece that was really missing for me, and if I could go back and rewrite all of my course proposals that I've done for the dance program, which I'm kind of working on, this would be the piece that I would make sure is present right in that course proposal. And that's the civic responsibility piece. In that, you can see in the lighter shade, right? Students recognize issues of public concern. So I often talk to my dance students about, why do we do this? Why do we go out into the community and provide some dance education? Or we go to that senior center and share with them maybe about those BIPOC choreographers, because there are a lot of groups, organizations, whatever, that can't afford to go to like our Buffalo Shays Performing Arts Center and see a performance. There are many children who can't afford to go to private dance studios. It's very expensive. For those of you that know, you have kids in, right, dance, hockey, whatever it might be, these things take a lot of time, and they can have an expense. And both of those, for some of our families, are challenging to be able to take that time, right? So this piece, the civic responsibility, for me, has become even a greater importance. And again, I'll talk about that even a little bit more, but in terms of the taxonomy, right, it goes just simply from understanding that there's, recognizing that there's an issue of public concern, to the students evaluate the community engaged learning project and their individual civic responsibilities. How do they see what they did makes a difference, and how will they continue that in the future? Thanks, Laura. We can go to the next slide now. Right, so this figure, student views on the importance of contributing to the larger community. People want to be generous. They want to give back. They just need the opportunity to be able to do that, right? So that's what we need to provide our students, is that opportunity to give back. And when we ask them what that was that important to them to be able to do it, this is the result here, right? So the first column, and Laura, it's real little, so you might need to help me with this one here because I can't see it big. The should.
Yeah, so dark blue is students answer the question, should community engagement or contributing to the larger community be a major focus of college? So dark blue is students saying, yes, it should be. And then the light blue is students answering the question that community engagement is a major focus, right? So they're expecting more, they want to contribute more than the opportunities that are given to them. And at Buffalo State, so of those 2,000-ish students that have a community engaged learning experience every year, last time we did an assessment in 2018, 91% of those students who responded to the survey agreed with a statement that service learning courses, that other students should take service learning courses at Buffalo State. So they value the opportunity at Buffalo State, they value the experience, and they say, yes, this is something that other students should participate in as well.
And that's really, that gets back to the heart of what I was talking about, right? They say it should be, but is it? And so I'm looking at that information from our students at Buffalo State and saying, okay, if it's not in my course, how do I make that happen in my course? How do I do that student learning outcome that addresses that civic responsibility piece? So we want to know what works in your classroom. Are you, there are so many different ways that you work with your students, and I'm just going to offer an idea here, right? So as a faculty in the dance program, one of the courses that I'm teaching it this semester is called Kinesthetic Methods and Practices. And that course really is open to education students, right? So we often teach with auditory and visual. And I know there's a big debate going on right now about learning styles, and that's not what this course is about. This course is about really thinking about it in terms of a teaching method, and that the more opportunities, going back to again that that those different pathways to get to the learning, right? That's what I'm talking about in this particular course, that it doesn't have to be all visual, staring at the screen, which has been really challenging for me during this COVID time, right? To be teaching kinesthetic methods in COVID. And so it doesn't have to be all visual. It doesn't have to be all lecture and auditory. How do we create lessons using movement, kinesthetic and tactile learning to address academic content, right? How do I teach those fifth graders a math concept by moving their bodies and engaging them in a different way? So that's something that I try to get out there to my colleagues as well, even at the college level. How can you engage students in a variety of ways to make their learning more interesting, help them to be more engaged? Right? So we want to know from you guys what works in your classroom. And you can certainly unmute, or you could put it in the chat. We just thought we'd take a little bit of time to do that. Anybody want to offer an idea?
Or if you have any questions, we'll just take a little pause here if there's any questions about the taxonomy that we've presented, or anything else that's come up before we kind of switch into giving you some examples. Joy's going to go a little bit more in depth with her course, and then we're going to frame some remote experiences and opportunities for you to help you think about how your discipline might fit to do community engaged learning during COVID.
I'm looking forward to the examples because I engage teachers in researching their communities to create place-based curriculum, but I don't know that I'm doing the actual service part of getting them out into the communities doing work.
Okay. Yeah, we can just move on to those examples. I'll give some specifics. Some disciplines lend themselves very easily to community engaged work, right? Sociology, criminal justice. It was challenging at times for people to think about dance as being one of those activities, because we think of it as mostly teaching technique. So improving the physical of a dancer and choreography. But I can share in a little bit about how I break that down in my courses.
Thanks for bringing that up, Sharon. Anyone else have anything like that you hope that we'll still address in the time that we have left? Feel free to post it in the chat or unmute real quick before we move on. Anyone else want to jump in with a comment or question?
Yeah, Chris, back and forth with that community engaged learning and service learning. And between the two, we're bouncing back and forth with that. We'll get through some of this, and then maybe we can all have a conversation around that, because it is language that is changing.
Yeah, we can definitely get to that. I have a couple slides that I'll just do real quick here. A faculty member from the Health and Wellness Department that we work closely with, Drew Hemler, wasn't able to join us today, but he's done this presentation with us a couple times, and we thought his slides here were really valuable. So his original teaching strategies, right, in the yellow circle there in the middle, these are things that he's normally done, and his course is always online. This is an online course, so when it hit the pandemic, he actually didn't have a different instruction method. He was still teaching remotely and in his online course, but he utilized a variety of teaching strategies to reach students. Role playing, simulation, lecture, hands-on activities, variety of things. And then when COVID hit, he ended up switching up some of his strategies anyway to expand the engagement opportunities, knowing that students were struggling, knowing that other courses were switching, and that students were spending a whole lot more time online. He felt it was important to mix up some of the strategies that he was using in order to support students during the challenging second half of the spring semester. So rather than synchronous lectures, for example, he recorded lectures and made it more accessible for students who were having conflicts with other courses and with family obligations and work and things like that. He used Facebook Live, he used social media to reach students as a way, again, to make it more accessible if students were having trouble accessing Blackboard or didn't have a device, a computer at home and only had their phone. He was trying to make content really reachable for students in a variety of ways. So he found some, we won't go into these details here, but he found some really creative ways to support students during that time.
So I've been chatting back and forth about the dance program and everything, so I'm going to zoom through these pretty quick. Service learning in the dance program. So dance at Buffalo State delivers a liberal arts education and embraces a civic and community engaged philosophy in all aspects of the program, fulfilling our dance students' individual needs. So the diverse curriculum is designed to deepen students' understanding of cultural, historic, and aesthetic. Again, I just want to bring your attention to these to say, we aren't that dance program that is all about teaching technique and choreography and developing performers. If one of my students wants to go into performance and choreography, I help them to see that that is a gift to our community. And just like I was talking about with people going and watching performances, right? So they're giving a gift. And in addition to that, our art as a nonverbal way of communicating can send very powerful messages about what is going on in the world. And we can address lots of different things. So we can go to the next slide, Laura. Mm-hmm. So the virtual course and community partner collaboration. So typical courses, right? What we would do is, let's say in one of the education classes, I would have the students, like I said, create the lesson plan. We would try them out in class together. They would go in pairs to the community partner organization. We would work out all of those time, place, space issues ahead of time. And then the students would go and they would deliver directly to those children or seniors, or individuals with special needs, right? Depends on the community partner need. And then they would come back and we would review and reflect about it. And well, when COVID hit, we were in the midst of this, right? COVID hit at the middle of March or so, and we were just getting ready in the middle of the semester to be going in and delivering this material face to face with our community partners. So we had to shift gears. And this is some of the ways that we shift gears. And actually, it's a little bit of a lesson learned for me. It opened up opportunities to do different things, right? I keep saying, that lemonade out of lemons. Now I have, as Drew showed in the other slide, now I have various ways to be able to engage my community partners and have the students engage the community partners. So it doesn't always have to be synchronous. There could be some asynchronous, doing videos for teaching and training if we can't get the face-to-face, which often is a big concern for our students because many of them work and many of them have transportation issues, right? So if I could do a video, now they can still address, and maybe they, or we could do it through Zoom. So they're still doing it live, but it's through the screen. So they can still interact with the kids, which is what we're doing this semester, which has been great. So COVID-19 forced us to rethink the delivery. Research essays were converted to letters for purposes of influencing change. They do these 500-word summations of articles that they've read, and I have them convert them into a letter and I send them to state ed. Why is dance education important? So their oral presentations, we have taken some of the questions and we put them in social media, getting people to respond, getting the community to respond to those questions. So it just like in Drew's slide, there are ways to think about, here's the problem. I can't do it face-to-face anymore. How do I do it in a different way and still maintain the quality of the project? Right. So we can switch to the next slide, Laura. So again, here's the community partners' responses, right? Mid-semester, we're switching gears. I didn't, know what to do. We were kind of making things happen as it was happening, right? So 6 community partners were invited to the final class session. In attendance were 3 of them who were able to make it, and these were a couple of their comments, right? So even though it was a pandemic and we needed to switch gears and we couldn't do face-to-face with them, they still felt that it was really valuable, and they were surprised that the students were able to shift gears like that, keep the leadership, still engage their populations. So they were thrilled to have us continue. We didn't just drop the project, right, and say we can't do it anymore. And we can move to the next one, Laura. There we go. And here's the students' responses, right? So I expected some of them to be saying, I was frustrated. We shouldn't have continued on because we couldn't deliver it the way we were supposed to. You changed it up on us in the middle of the semester, and that's not fair, right? But none of them said that. They all shared how they felt that it was still a really valuable experience for them. I will never forget this experience. Thank you for putting so much trust. I could, choke up when I hear that. Trust into my hands. Being flexible and ready to alter plans is essential, especially when a pandemic hits, right? So they got it. They got it. I just gave them the framework and they plowed through and were excited to do it. Yeah, we can go on to the next slide. Right, so here's my lessons learned from all of that very quickly. What continues to be most important is delivering those student learning outcomes, the content for your course, or as I've said, building a new one in for that civic responsibility, and collaborating with the community partner to address their mission, need, and population, that reciprocity. That's still important, whether the delivery is face-to-face or through some virtual means or a different kind of project that just gets delivered, right? And some of the other considering how to convert your current teaching methods, right? So that gets back to the what's working in your classroom. How are you doing that? How can you convert that to a service learning project? Like, can you, just like I said, you know, I have them write these essays. Why not turn it into a letter that we send off as advocacy for dance education? Reflecting on the goal of that direct service learning project. What is that goal? Is it advocacy? Is it information? Is it to provide a resource? Right? That's okay. Hang on to that goal. How do you do it differently? And then adopt what you have learned from the virtual experience when we return to face-to-face. How can you connect with students and community partners through video conferencing? So what this whole thing has taught me is that even if my community partner can't come in and participate in the service learning orientation that we do at the very beginning of the semester, I bring them in via Zoom now, right? I have, that's great. They can still be with us. They just have to carve out that time, but it cuts out the transportation time for them. They can jump in and out if they need to. Yeah, so taking those important things that we have done to convert during this pandemic and these remote or virtual experiences and still hanging on to those. This semester with one of my community partners, she pops on at the end of my class every Tuesday for the last 5 minutes, just to answer questions for the students about maybe what's coming up. It eases their mind. They see the community partner. They have a relationship with Jenny, right? And then Jenny and I are going to co-teach a section of my class that talks about understanding your community and classroom considerations, right? So Jenny and I are going to partner together. I don't think I would have thought to do that if it weren't through this virtual experience. We can move on.
Okay, so, whoops, I'm going ahead too far here. So I highlighted a couple of Drew's slides, but I think I failed to mention how he converted his community engaged learning project. So his students were also supposed to go directly into community organizations to do health and wellness videos. So the organizations that were listed in that partner sheet early on in the presentation had identified, boy, our clients, our senior citizens or our youth or whoever it might be, really need support around, eating nutritionally, in an urban environment where access to healthy foods is not as accessible as other areas. Or it might be, they develop some workshops around sexually transmitted diseases and sexual safety for teens for one of the programs. So what they did is convert those in-person workshops to videos as well. Some of them were conducted in live sessions, as Joy had talked about. Some of them were recorded and shared with the organizations who could then share them with their families. So they effectively transitioned the same content into a different delivery mode, as Joy's talking about as well. So this slide kind of summarizes some other ideas for disciplines. I know we talked about, Sharon, you asked about education and teacher programs. A lot of our education faculty have done videos as well. So with longstanding community partner organizations, it's been easier for them to share information with their schools that they collaborate with or with the after school program, because the after school program can then distribute some of the video content or the materials or activities that are developed by students and get them into the hands of people, so that, we're not responsible for getting them directly into the hands of the youth, for example, but we're responsible for getting them to the partner school or organization who gets them out to the families. If we think about different forms of community engaged learning, what everybody thinks of most often, right, is direct service, that students are going into the community and doing a direct project that interacts with clients. And that gives us a lot of learning experiences. We cannot do that right now during COVID. Between the SUNY guidelines for applied learning, which are strongly discouraging in-person activities in the community, to just thinking of the day-to-day health and safety and ethics of it, we're not sending students out. So we're doing indirect projects. We're doing behind the scenes supports, developing lesson plans and content, creating websites and brochures, the videos, of course, conducting surveys. I mentioned that early on. Is there an assessment that the community partner needs that still fits in with your learning outcomes? Are there interviews that can be conducted via telephone or Zoom? Developing resources and best practices for program delivery. It's a great time to have students do some research-based projects, right? That they can investigate background content and pull together resources that the community organizations can utilize, perhaps for programming, perhaps for grant writing, a variety of different things. Joy mentioned advocacy and having students write letters. That's a form of civic engagement. How might they advocate for the issue that's being discussed or addressed, or the outcome of a program, so that it supports the learning in the course that you're exploring and involves them in understanding also how to be an active citizen. Let's see, marketing plans are on here. I mentioned websites. And then also in terms of education, we have a lot of students and classes that are doing online programming. So we don't, if they're in person, you never want a student to be alone with one of our students to be alone with a child. It's the same remote. So the organization still has to provide supervision in a small group context. If your students are doing educational supports and mentoring, you still do not want them alone in a Zoom room, for example, just with children. There has to be supervision in that space, but they can still be doing some educational supports that helps the organization to reach the families. So there's a lot of resources on here. There's some books and some website content specifically around online service learning, or e-service learning as it's often called. Our website has a lot of information about developing content and sharing information in a remote environment. So you'll get this presentation. I encourage you to check out some of the resources that are there. And then we just want to leave the last few minutes of time here for any questions and discussion. Not sure if anything has come up in the chat.
Laura, Chris had asked, and I said we'd revisit it. And actually, before we go there, I just want to say, it looks like from the chat that a whole bunch of you are discovering that you are doing this work, or that you could tweak your courses just a little bit to take it to this place. And that's just awesome. And we are available to always help. So, stay in touch with us if we can offer any new ideas. But getting back to Chris's question, though, about the difference between community engaged learning and service learning, right? And is that just semantics at this point, or are we looking at it differently? And I don't know, Laura, if you want to answer that, because
Sure.
Yeah.
Honestly, when Buffalo State started its service learning program in 2003, we wrestled with the terminology at that time. The idea, the term service, right, carries a lot of different meanings. There can be some faith-based connotations to service that some communities face. We had a faculty member early on from the Native American community who articulated concern about the term service from a historical perspective, and how the United States has approached the Native American community with service. So we adopted the term service learning in 2003 when we founded our center. We founded it through a grant from the Corporation for National and Community Service, and they utilized the term service learning. And so we adopted it because of the grant. But over time, we've moved away from that. Community engaged learning takes on a little bit less politicalization of the idea. it's a little more respectful in terms of it not being one-sided, right? You're going out and helping, you're going out and fixing, you're providing a service to someone, but really that integration of that students are learning through this experience, and that is of equal value to what the community can benefit. And so it just kind of opens up the idea to a broader interpretation of what we're doing when we have students engage collaboratively and reciprocal relationships with our community partners.
Thanks. I thought it also I know when I was at Brockport, there was a professor in the computer science department who would have his students do websites for a local small business. And because they were, a business, a for-profit business, there were some people that said, well, that's not service learning, right? So I don't know. I like the term and community engaged because it seems a little broader and a little, like you said, less political or open to misinterpretation or different interpretations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
And we still do encourage primarily partnerships with nonprofits because the resources are so much limited, so much more limited than with oftentimes with for-profit enterprises. However, there are, extensive small businesses and micro enterprises that are not raking in the money. And so you're right in a sense that it doesn't have to be limited to the not-for-profit community. It's just a matter of, does a major corporation really need students to be involved? And is that can be an extremely valuable internship experience, an extremely valuable experiential learning opportunity for students. So we don't devalue that, but really the idea of community benefit and community outcomes isn't the same if you're working for a for-profit corporation that has the financial resources to potentially hire someone who can be doing that rather than, the smaller micro enterprise and nonprofit community.
Yeah, I'd like to just say, taking it back to the taxonomy, right? The quality components, is there truly a reciprocity between the faculty member and the students in the course and the community partner if they're this large corporation? Where's the civic responsibility in that piece? Unless you're working with maybe a piece of the company that does that greater good work, which many of the larger corporations do have that arm of their corporation that provide grants or different things like that.
I just want to draw attention to Dr. Rihanna Rogers' comments in the chat too, and encourage others to look at what she's had students do in terms of the videos. And I think you bring up a really important point about scholarship, and we didn't talk about that in this conversation, but allowing students to do community engaged scholarship is beneficial. And the opportunity for faculty to really tie their scholarship in with community engaged learning is a critical next step, kind of once you get into this type of work.
Right, at Buffalo State right now, we're taking a look at, we have a undergraduate research and there is something called an early undergraduate research opportunity for our freshmen and sophomores, for our first years and sophomores. And I'm going to contact the faculty member who has that Euro student and see if the research is community engaged scholarship in any way, so that we can have that connection being made. Or if their courses, anybody who's teaching a community engaged course, service learning course, is it tied, like mine is it tied to their research in some way? My research is on kinesthetic methods, teaching methods and practices. So my students act as almost research assistants as they're learning. And I used that towards tenure and promotion.
So we are at time. I want to thank you both for a really excellent, I've heard a lot of service learning presentations, and this one was one of the most comprehensive and I've ever heard. So community engaged learning, excuse me. And so this is really good. And if anybody wants to stick around and have some, chat with the both of you during the break, yeah, feel free if you're willing to stick around. And if you could send me your slides, I'll make sure that they're available on the website. So I'm going to do
Thanks
that.
so much, Chris. Thanks,
Thank you so much.
everybody.
All
Thanks for
right.
joining us.